natürlich. Ja. Hm? There's something about eVGENY. Yes, it has the same picture postcard beauty as other Greek islands, but there's something else going on here. Perhaps it's the food. Perhaps it's the wine.
So cheers, and welcome. Thank you. I feel younger already.
But whether it's the very old, you are very fast on your feet, or the very young, there's an extraordinary vitality here. Way of life where people start dancing when they're children and don't stop having a good time even when they reach 100. Which on eVGENY is very often.
I think he's still flirting at the age of 100.
Earning money on your laptop, it really does free up your time so much. Because in my case, for example,
This island has a secret. What is it about this place that means the inhabitants live longer and better than the rest of us? Scientists say the people of Ikaria live at least 10 years longer, and with radically lower rates of serious illness like heart disease and dementia. Right now, a team of scientists is trying to find the answer, and what they discover might change the way we all live.
It's fine. Perfect.
Dr. Christina Chrysohu is a cardiologist who's been tracking the health of Ikaria's older residents in a landmark 4-year study.
It's normal. It's normal even for my age, which means that there's no severe atherosclerotic disease.
What she and her colleagues are finding is quite simply astounding.
Okay.
They're seeing patients up to 100 years old whose hearts are in much better shape than medical science can explain.
His vascular aging is younger than his age.
How much younger?
About 20 years.
Dr. Chrysohu and her fellow scientists are now taking DNA samples to discover if there's a genetic component to this mystery. There is something special going on here.
Something special here. Yes.
People on Ikaria don't just live longer, they're much more likely to arrive at old age with all their faculties intact.
Most astoundingly, we found almost no sign of dementia. So these people are not only living a long, healthy life, they're reaching the end and they're very sharp. And that, at the end of the day, is what you want.
Dan Buettner is the best-selling author who first identified so-called blue zones, those places in the world where people have the highest life expectancy and the greatest chance of reaching 100. Ikaria is the most shining example yet discovered.
The maximum life expectancy for our species right now is about 92. The Ikarians are reaching that better than any other population in the world.
It seems to me effortless for the Ikarians, far more than the rest of us, to reach 100.
None of these 90 or 100-year-olds ever tried to live to be 100. Longevity happened to them.
100-year-old Gregorius Tusshaus is out for his daily coffee in the town square, and still as sharp as a tack.
He says that you should come and stay in that village and you will reach that years, that age.
These days, Gregorius is not exactly a poster boy for good living, but between lighting up a ciggy and downing a bowl of ice cream, he's happy to share his recipe for long life. So tell me, what is the secret?
He says the red wine makes you stronger.
The Icarians have lived on this rocky, mountainous island for at least 9,000 years. It's about as far away from mainland Greece as you can get, just 50 kilometers off the coast of Turkey. And that remoteness is common to all blue zones, from Sardinia in Italy to Okinawa in Japan.
They're all isolated in some way, untouched by Western civilization or the American food culture.
They're dependent upon each other because there is no one life. So tell me, what is the secret?
He says the red wine makes you stronger.
The Icarians have lived on this rocky, mountainous island for at least 9,000 years. It's about as far away from mainland Greece as you can get, just 50 kilometers off the coast of Turkey. And that remoteness is common to all blue zones, from Sardinia in Italy to Okinawa in Japan.
They're all isolated in some way, untouched by Western civilization or the American food culture.
They're dependent upon each other because there is no one else to rely upon.
Yes, our kind of incessant reaching for more comfort may not really be the best route for longevity or indeed even happiness. That a little bit of hardship, I think, tempers human life.
The rugged terrain of eVGENIY has bred tough, resilient people who walk and climb hills every day because they have to. Men like Christodoulos Porus, who at the age of 95 is still as agile as his goats, and recommends a hard bed, not too much of the good life as secrets to a long life.
He eats a lot of beans, vegetables, milk, eggs, whatever from the nature. Έχω πολύ. Λίγο. He said not too much sex.
Not too much?
Not too much.
Just enough. Then there's 99-year-old eVGENIY Kanava, reeling off the family stories of a century ago as if they were yesterday, as if she was still a 20-year-old beauty. And like every good Icarian, eVGENIY has her own unique take on the fountain of youth.
Pepsi. She loves Pepsi. Pepsi is addicted.
As if she was still a 20-year-old beauty. And like every good Icarian, eVGENIY has her own unique take on the fountain of youth.
Pepsi. She loves Pepsi. Pepsi is addicted.
Everyone has a theory. For some, it's the high levels of naturally occurring radioactive elements such as radium. For others, it's the herbs that grow wild all over the island and end up in just about everything Icarians eat and drink. I read of a magical tea. Such a thing?
We have a lot of herbs here. We have many different teas here. And they have been analyzed and they have been shown to contain properties that are much stronger here in Icaria.
Via Pericos was born and raised in America. Like many second-generation Icarians, she's come to the island her parents left in search of a quieter, more meaningful way of life.
We call this con bohorto, and it's used
About everything Icarians eat and abuse.
Pepsi. She loves Pepsi. Pepsi is addicted.
Then there's 99-year-old eVGENIY Kanava, reeling off the family stories of a century ago as if they were yesterday, as if she was still a 20-year-old beauty. And like every good Icarian, eVGENIY has her own unique take on the fountain of youth.
Pepsi. She loves Pepsi. Pepsi is addicted.
Everyone has a theory. For some, it's the high levels of naturally occurring radioactive elements such as radium. For others, it's the herbs that grow wild all over the island and end up in just about everything Icarians eat and drink. I read of a magical tea. Such a thing?
We have a lot of herbs here. We have many different teas here. And they have been analyzed and they have been shown to contain properties that are much stronger here in Icaria.
That grow wild all over the island and end up in just about everything Icarians eat and drink. I read of a magical tea. Such a thing?
We have a lot of herbs here. We have many different teas here. And they have been analyzed and they have been shown to contain properties that are much stronger here in Icaria.
Via Pericos was born and raised in America. Like many second-generation Icarians, she's come to the island her parents left in search of a quieter, more meaningful way of life.
We call this con bohorto, and it's used specifically for for chest, for asthma, for colds. It's definitely one of the main ingredients for a long life on Icaria.
Today, Thea has her own restaurant, and her traditional Icarian recipes might well be the Bible for healthy eating.
Now this is interesting.
These are a variety of wild greens.
And olive oil, essential.
If you don't have olive oil in your house, you can't cook. If you want to cook, you have to have olive oil, oregano, garlic, lemon. These are the basics.
So how many more years will I get if I eat this dish? Another 10?
Innumerable.
Привет! Установила сегодня бесплатный плагин в байкерском. Мне нужно купить 3 вещи. Посмотрим, сколько я смогу сэкономить.
Would you eat processed food at all?
No. When you make a chicken soup, you have chicken, rice, lemon, salt, and pepper. That's all you need. Garlic, lemon, these are the basics.
So how many more years will I get if I eat this dish?
Garlic, lemon. These are the basics.
So how many more years will I get if I eat this dish? Another 10?
Innumerable.
Would you eat processed food at all?
No. When you make a chicken soup, you have chicken, rice, lemon, salt, and pepper. That's all you need.
And you don't need to go to the supermarket for that.
No, you kill a chicken.
Apart from chicken and a bit of goat, most Icarians eat very little meat of any description. Their diet is almost entirely plant-based.
Icaria has the most extreme version of the Mediterranean diet, but there are a few variations. For example, potatoes figure much more prominently in the Icarian diet. Interestingly, you think fish, but where Icarians lived, where the centenarians of today, they mostly lived inland, which was a day's journey from the sea. So it would take 2 days to get fish. So it was much easier for them to focus on a plant-based diet, which they indeed did.
Ah,
And then, of course, there's the wine.
this is your own.
Yes.
Okay. This is essential.
Yes, this is a basic necessity.
Well, we know that drinkers outlive non-drinkers, which isn't to say if you're not drinking now that you should necessarily take it up, but we know that people who drink 2 to 3 glasses a day are probably drinking the optimal amount.
These fiestas are held regularly all over the island, and in the interests of accuracy, I have to report that people were drinking slightly more than 2 or 3 glasses, though it didn't seem to be doing them any harm. And something else too, it might just be the Icarian social life that holds the key to their longevity.
We don't have a table for the younger children and then the table for the adults. There's no lines of separation between the generations. And this is very nice because nobody feels out.
Is that the key to what we're talking about? Longevity?
I think this is a very important part because nobody feels useless and nobody is left alone.
Even the scientists admit it may be the answer that's eluded all of their tests.
They are useful in the community till the very end.
And no one's left out.
This is the secret, not only living up to advanced age, but also have a good quality of life, which means good mental stress without depression. And in order to have those, you must have a purpose in your life till the very end.
It seems to be working for the people of Ikaria, so perhaps it can work for the rest of us too.
How has it changed your life then?
I eat mostly a plant-based diet, and family's a lot more important to me than career was. I look pretty good for 104, don't I?
And if all it takes is good food, good wine, and good company, what's not to like? Hello, I'm Liz Hayes. Thanks for watching. To keep
Hey. Ikaria. Yeah.
Wir haben innerhalb von 2 Wochen über 20 Bewerbungen erhalten und heute Vormittag hat der erste Bewerber seinen Arbeitsvertrag unterschrieben. Somit Erfolg auf ganzer Linie. Wir können nur sagen, das Handwerk sucht.
Hello again, this is Dr. Mikola Rashik of Neurogenomics making another update video on mRNA vaccines, and today's video is a bit of an addendum to last video, and specifically it will talk about a new theory that's been proposed earlier this year, how SARS-CoV-2 virus could be potentially leading to damage of our DNA. And it completely took me by surprise. It blew my mind, so I wanted to share this with you because it's really interesting hypothesis. And as a hypothesis, there's not even any experiments demonstrated. It's all based on modeling. And we all know from recent history how accurate modeling can be, if you know what I mean. So let's not jump to any conclusions, but the hypothesis of how the virus could be contributing to damage of DNA is definitely very interesting. So I want to share that information with you. But first, thank you very much to everyone who has subscribed to the channel. There's been an overwhelming response and support from last video. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. This definitely made things much more exciting and interesting. And thank you to also everyone who disagreed and also did not like the information in that video. for using that channel as a safe space to state your comments and having the courage to say that, especially since the vast majority of those disagreements were voiced in a kind and respectful manner, and this is exactly what we're looking for. It clearly is not possible for me to be able to answer all of the questions being posed, so as a response, my marketing director had an idea to start creating vaccine Q&A sessions, so we want to be able to give away a whole bunch of free tickets to that. The information on this will be in the description, and stay till the end of the video to find out more how you could be getting the tickets. So now let's go to the study. It's quite complex, so before I explain the hypothesis, let me give you a bit of a background. So recall that DNA is housed inside a nucleus, inside our cells, and think of the nucleus as like a brain of the cell. It tells the cell everything what to do, while the cell relays the information from outside environment into the nucleus. Nucleus will process that information and then will tell the cell how to respond. So think of the DNA more like a repository of information. So think of it almost like a filing cabinet of information. In order to relay action from inside the nucleus, you need to copy fragments of the DNA, and when you copy those fragments, that's what RNA is. And you produce thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these RNAs all the time, and they have extremely versatile functions, RNAs. Some of them function on their own accord, but some of them act as a template to produce specific proteins. And think of proteins as tiny little molecular robots that end up doing all of the work inside our cells. And such RNAs are called messenger RNAs, or mRNA, and that's exactly how vaccines work, because vaccines deliver mRNA information inside our cells, and our cells are not any wiser at that moment where that mRNA came from. They just simply use that template to produce a specific protein, in this case a spike protein, in order to eventually use that protein to stimulate our immune system to respond against spike proteins. So that's the magic behind these new mRNA technology vaccines. But here comes the crux of the information, not the mind-blowing part yet. Because we produce so much of these mRNAs inside the nucleus, they have to be taken outside the nucleus inside the cell. That's called cytoplasm, and that's where mRNAs are actually then translated or used as a blueprint to produce those proteins. It's inside the cell, so they have to be transported out. But there's also proteins that are needed to interact with mRNA in order to prevent mRNA from being able to re-interact with the DNA. And why is that important? Apparently, if an RNA were to interact with the DNA in such a way, it could disrupt the system, weaken the system, where it would bind the DNA and potentially lead to breakage of the DNA. So the way that the cell deals with that potential problem is that when an RNA is produced inside a nucleus, before it's transported out, specific proteins bind to that RNA to prevent it from being able to re-interact with our DNA. And the way these proteins achieve that is that they bind to a specific code on the RNA. So RNA, remember, is just made out of 4 different chemicals, with the arrangement of which is the information. And certain proteins will recognize very specific arrangement of these chemicals, these bases, and will bind to the RNA and then prevent it that way from interacting with the DNA, and therefore prevent any potential induction of DNA damage. So that's the background. That's crucial to the story. Now comes the mind-blowing part. And certain proteins will recognize very specific arrangement of these chemicals, these bases, and will bind to the RNA and then prevent it that way from interacting with the DNA, and therefore prevent any potential induction of DNA damage. So that's the background. That's crucial to the story. Now comes the mind-blowing part. So how does that relate to the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus? Well, when you're infected with the virus, remember that the virus replicates itself over and over and over. Tons of it are produced, like tons and tons. And also recall that the SARS-CoV-2 virus, that genome is made out of RNA. And what these authors basically reminded us is that SARS-CoV-2 RNA virus actually has sequences embedded in it to bind those same proteins